Hey, what's up you guys? This is Bart coming to you from TST Industries in Florida, bringing you another episode of TST Garage. In this episode, we have our beautiful Ninja 400 on the lift with us. We will be performing an upgrade to this bike. As some of you may know, we've been working really hard at designing an integrated tail light that is worthy of going with these beautiful body lines that Kawasaki has implemented on this bike. We felt like the OEM taillight fell short a little bit. That's our opinion. A lot of you guys actually voiced that same opinion to us. So we've gone ahead and designed this beautiful unit that is available to you in either clear or smoked lens. All the functionality is the same between these two units. You just have a different color choice for the lens. Like always, our taillights come pre-wired for OEM plug-and-play connection. They also fit exactly like the OEM unit. You will not need any sort of converter pieces or anything. You just take out the OEM, put this one in, good to go. We did put on our 9-state programmable circuit into this taillight. You will be able to access 9 different program states via the press of a button that remains accessible after the installation. You just blow your passenger seat off, push that button, you toggle on to the next program. We actually revised the optics of this lens. We've given it these elegant pockets that really go along with all the curvature and line meeting points of the tail of this bike. It looks really sharp on the bike. I've actually seen it on this bike already prior to this installation. I'm really proud of it. I think you guys will like it. As always, when going to an integrated taillight setup, you are moving your signals into the light capsule. Here you are using LED lighting instead of the OEM incandescent signals that will cause your bike to hyper flash. Your signals will flash much faster. These lights do come by default with a set of load balancing resistors. That has sort of become the industry standard. We do include them, but most of the guys out there do opt for an electronic LED flasher relay. Like you see here, we have our own version. We do have a separate video covering the installation of that part, so please check that out on our website or our YouTube channel. For now, that's probably all I want to say about the product itself. I'm really chomping at the bit to show you guys how to install it. It's pretty simple. Kawasaki didn't make it very, very simple like some other bike manufacturers. There are a couple things that we need to point out to you to make your installation successful, but that's what I'm here for. I'll be glad to take you through that. I'm excited to start. Let's get going. For this video, we've made the assumption that you already have your fender off and it's replaced by some sort of a fender eliminator, hopefully one of our Elite 1 systems like you see here. If you need help removing your fender at this point, I suggest you check out our fender eliminator video that breaks this process down into little steps for you, just like we're going to do here with the taillight in this video. So at this point, we can start removing some of the components here. I'm going to get rid of the seats. And then we could start removing some fasteners. Under the passenger seat, there typically is a tray that is installed from the factory that covers the trunk area. We actually remove these things and not use them. If your bike is still equipped with this, you can either remove it or work around it. Ours is already out. That's how we're going to proceed. I'm going to start by removing these 4 fasteners. They will require an 8mm socket. Start at the back. They do have shoulder spacers underneath them, so we will need to retain them and make sure they don't get lost. Now I'm going to switch over to a 4mm Allen. Remove these 4 fasteners. Once that is done, we can deflect these pieces of plastic here, the shrouds on the side. They are made of polypropylene, so they flex pretty good. We're not going to be removing them off the bike. We get enough access to remove this extra set of 8mm head screws. And we will make use of an 8mm socket for those again. They do have a washer. Please retain that. Now we can dislodge the lower panels that we just took those fasteners out of. These are held in rubber grommets. So we will pull straight out. This will enable access underneath there. And there is one additional screw on each side that we will need to remove using Phillips head screwdriver. So if we pry back on here, we have access to this Phillips screw here. And I know that this approach may seem a little barbaric with all this flexing that we're doing, but it saves us from having to remove a whole host of other fasteners and the entire panels from the side. If you feel so inclined, you can actually remove all those fasteners, take these side panels off, and this will be much easier for you. But I feel like limiting the amount of steps that we have to take to make this installation is pretty important, as it's already pretty convoluted. Use my Phillips head screwdriver to remove the seat latch. This is necessary because the left-hand side tail panel comes off with the cable, and it's vastly easier to remove it from here than from the panel itself. What I like to do here is just put it back like this as a placeholder. Now I'm going to switch over to a 3mm Allen. We have two more fasteners we need to remove. They are just under this panel here. These are the only remaining fasteners in the side panels, and they're the only ones with a 3mm Allen head. And now a lot of this stuff is free as far as fasteners go, and we'll just have to dislodge the grommet stud mounting points, and then they'll come apart. At this point we can start removing this panel, and remember we have to flex this away, and then we have to dislodge a number of friction fasteners that fit into rubber grommets. So first thing I'm going to do is pull straight out on this panel until I feel them dislodge. There is one slide feature made of this ABS plastic that fits into interference geometry on the inside here, so it's important that you don't just pry it away. You will snap that. This will have to be freed from the rubber grommets. This will need to be pried away, and then we will rotate about this portion and push back, and then we'll be free to come out like that. Let me put this plastic to the side. Now we'll focus on the left side, and this is the side that has the seat latch, so it's pretty much the same procedure. Just have to make sure that we clear the latch mechanism. The following step will consist of removing this push fastener by pressing in the center and withdrawing it. I like to reset them as they come out so they're ready for reinstallation, and then the removal of this Phillips head fastener. This is a symmetrical setup, same fasteners on the other side. And now the top section, center tail, is ready to come out. Two more tabs here that engage with interference geometry in this direction. So we need to push back until they clear, and then they come out smooth. Now with access to the wiring compartment here, we can perform all of our disconnections. As you can see here, obviously, we've eliminated the fender along with the lighting components on the fender, so all these plugs are unused at the moment. This gray and black is where we're going to plug our signal leads into. Our main taillight wire terminates in a 3-position plug here that is actually inserted into the frame. I like to take that down. Makes the disconnection a lot easier. So using my needle nose pliers, I reset these ramping features, and I'm able to push that down out of the frame. And now we can turn this around and press unlock button and withdraw our plugs. Now our tail light is free from the wiring loom. Move on to the removal of these 4 fasteners. After the removal of this last one here, we can extract this tongue tab that interfaces with our tail light. Now, we still have one fastening connection here. We have these 2 bolts. If you still have your OEM fender on, you will have 4 bolts. So we will need to remove whatever equipment is there, either the fender or fender eliminator that's in place of the fender. This will enable us to lower the sub tray and have access to the rest of the fasteners. As you can see here, I have enough mobility. One small point I want to make here is that I've noticed that the sub tray has these inserts that oftentimes will get dislodged. So you may find that this fell out on you during your process. Make sure that just before reassembly, you have those back in their correct place, which is inserted into the sub tray around the holes that mount your fender or fender eliminator. All right, back to our Phillips. Let's now remove the screws that hold the taillight into the sub tray. And now let's play some 3D Tetris with this light. First, we'll need to remove the grommets off the studs that we just disconnected. I like to press from the lens up. And we'll need to articulate this light in a way that we can clear one corner out, and it'll be pretty simple for the entire light to come out. We will need to reuse these rubber grommets on our new setup, so let's harvest them off of the OEM light. And once we're done with this, it is on to the fun part of reinstalling our new taillight on the bike. So on this particular bike, we have a stealthy theme going on. We have the pearl black paint. We have a lot of these carbon components, a lot of this gunmetal look anodized aluminum. So I saw it fitting to choose our smoked lens version of the taillight for this bike. We will first need to pre-configure it with the rubber grommets. Now the rubber grommets are symmetric about the slit, so we just need to work them in any which way, and they will fit in there. I like to give them the spin test to make sure that they have seated right. Okay, now I will undo the wire tie that holds all the wires together, stretch out my wiring loom, and then basically perform the reverse order of disassembly of the OEM taillight. Once my light is in, I'm going to make sure to align those rubber grommets we just inserted with the bosses that they fit on. And then make sure that once everything is seated, I don't have any unsightly gaps anywhere. And in fact, everything looks exactly like the assembly made with the OEM taillight. So we're good to go here. I'm going to start replacing some of the fasteners we took off. I'm going to start off with the large self-threading fastener with the large washer that will hold the taillight into the boss that it mounts into. And as I said before, these washers from here, spacers, they like to dislodge themselves. So let's go ahead and get them locked in place. I'm going to mount my fender eliminator right away so that I don't lose those guys and I don't have to replace them many times over. I'm not going to tighten this connection yet. This is just a placeholder so my spacers don't fly out. I'll tell you guys the reason in just a second. I like to tighten everything at the very, very end because then we still have control over where the taillight sits within all these parts here. We have to make sure that we don't create any gaps. The OEM taillight sat perfectly center, and we can achieve that with this taillight if we lock it down little by little and make sure that we hold the adjustment. So that tongue feature on a bracket will go into the taillight. It mimics exactly what the OEM taillight did. I'm going to replace those two fasteners that came out of that connection. But I'm not going to tighten them down just yet. Then there were two more of these self-threading fasteners adjacent to where the tongue feature fits. Let me get those in. All right, keep it nice and loose. It is at this point that I like to influence where all of these components sit in relation to each other and lock them down. Right here, it looks like I'm going to have to push this side into the taillight a little bit and lock down on everything. And let's see what happens. That looks really good to me. Maybe a little refinement here on this side. It is important not to over tighten these connections. We're threading a self-threading screw into polypropylene. There is a chance of over tightening and breaking the thread, so use some caution there. I think we're good here. We can proceed to the next stage. So let's now make our connections. We'll start with the main plug. Before we proceed any further, I like to make sure that the functions I connected are operating. I'm going to connect one of the signals and check that the correct side is flashing when I activate left or right, and in fact I got it right on the first try. All right, so let's now get this lock back into the frame. This isn't entirely necessary, but it just makes for a nice cable management setup in here. Now, I'm just going to find the routing guides for the wire. You can also pass this main taillight wire outside of this bracket here if you want to retain this space as a trunk. Choice is yours. I chose to basically flow like the OEM setup flowed. I'm going to grab a 4mm Allen and tighten up my fender eliminator. All the gaps still look good. And now I will basically be going in the reverse order of disassembly with all of the panels, starting from the center tail and then going on to the sides, replacing the seat latch, and that'll be that. After that, I can show you guys some of the programmable features. But for now, let's focus on the reassembly. Since this panel came out to the rear, to clear these clips, we'll have to put it back in the reverse order. Make sure the slides go in before you do anything else. All right. One more important thing to note with this setup is that the subtray ear for one of these fasteners has to be on the outside and the top center has to be on the inside for proper installation. We are going to replace these fasteners. then move on to our Phillips head fasteners that fit in this location. And it is at this point that we can start bringing in the sides. We'll start with the side that has the seat latch on it. Need to feed it through the void on the side here. Get it back pretty far so I could fit it under all of these components here. And sort of get it in place to engage the rear tab first. Tab that's at this tip here needs to go into its interference locking feature on the other panel that we are sliding it with. And then when everything's aligned, all of the grommets pop onto the studs of the friction fastener pairs, and your setup should look something like this. Go ahead and replace the seat latch at this point. Before I move forward, I like to check its operation. Everything looks good. Continuing with the right side panel, it's basically the same thing except no seat latch. All right, at this point we just need to replace a lot of the fasteners that we've taken off. I think at this point you've noticed that on the way out I use a power tool, on the way back in I always use hand tools. That will limit the chance of over tightening something and breaking a connection or perhaps stripping a bolt. As I work these fasteners in just before they're tight, I like to push on the bodywork to make sure that the lines and seams align the way the OEM setup looked. I don't want to induce any unsightly gaps. I've done that here. I'm going to reinsert the 8mm head screws with the shoulder washers into the spaces they came out of. It's important not to just screw them in without aligning the washers to make sure the smaller diameter pops into the bodywork. And one more time before tightening all the way, I will make sure that I am not closing up the gap on one side versus the other, making sure the gaps are symmetrical on the bike. And that looks really good. Now we can replace driver's seat. So should you choose to program your taillight at this point, you have access to the programming button from within your trunk compartment. This is standard brake. Toggle through will give you brake alert, 5 flashes, then solid. Toggle through will give you pulsar brake that flashes indefinitely as long as you have one of the brakes pressed. We also have signaling programs. Won't really get the full gist of this until we switch the flasher relay or mount resistors to this setup. So I can actually do that pretty quickly for you guys. I have one of our relays in my pocket. All right, this is what we call pulsar signal. This is your standard signal. And this is your scanning, or otherwise known as sequential signal from the center out. Three programs for the brake, 3 programs for the signal, combination of which gives you 9 program states. That's basically all the choices you have with our tail light. Now let's replace the seat and be done. All right, and we are done. Hope you guys had fun following along, and I really hope that you agree with me that we've actually taken something that was sort of ordinary and boring and brought out the potential of this whole tail with this elegant setup. Combination of our fender eliminator and the integrated tail light really sets off the back of this bike. It's sleek and sexy and elegant, like I said. I'm really proud of it. It took a long time to develop. We tinkered with it for a really, really long time. We had changes, and even after having a final design, I changed a bunch of things on it anyway. Just really wanted to bring top-notch product to the market here for this bike. This taillight will also fit the 16 and up ZX-10R and now the new upcoming 2019 ZX-6R. We are excited to provide this taillight to you guys out there. So head on over to tstindustries.com. Check out this product and other products in the category for this bike. We have a whole lineup of awesome parts. Hope to see you there. See you later.